right, and welcome to the Stranded Sports Podcast. We are joined today by the head coach of the 24-1 Belmont Bruins, winners of their last 21, Coach Casey Alexander. Coach, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, Coach, when did you first start to get into the game of basketball?
Oh, gosh, early age. I started playing when I was 5 years old and played all the way through college. Probably wasn't until my ninth grade year when I really realized how much I loved it and thought about coaching and that sort of thing. Our high school had a new head coach that year. And so everything kind of shifted from being a good team with good players to being really well coached and a good program. And so I was the beneficiary of that. And then had a very similar experience at Belmont.
And mentioning Belmont, how did it feel to get the assistant coach job under Rick Byrd right when you got done with your playing career?
Yeah, the timing was really unique for me. We were kind of a powerhouse NAIA program when I played and finishing in 1995, but we only had one more season after that in NAIA before we went straight to Division I, which was a kind of a remarkable move at that point in time to go straight from NAIA to Division I. So along with that move, an assistant coaching position was added to the staff, and it wasn't paying much, but thankfully Coach Byrd thought I would be a good addition, so I was kind of lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, you played at Belmont under Rick Byrd, and then you were able to spend time with him on his coaching staff. What was that experience like as a player and then as an assistant coach?
Yeah, obviously the relationship evolved over time. It was 20 consecutive years as a player and then an assistant coach, and so and really unique in a sense that, obviously I just mentioned we had great success when I played, but then when we made that transition to Division I, there were some lean years in there. There were 4 or 5 years where we were not in a conference. We had no chance of postseason play. We were playing a Division I schedule with mostly NAIA players or borderline Division I players, by the end of that time. So it was tough and a lot of questions about, can we do it? But then we joined what used to be the Transamerica Conference, is now the ASUN, and within just a couple of years won our first championship, and kind of the rest is history. So a lot of layers to my time with Coach Byrd, all of which, were beneficial in the end.
What was one of your favorite experiences being the assistant under a coach like Rick Byrd, who's had a long history with the program?
Oh yeah, geez. Well, there are many. There's no doubt about that. But I think our first NCAA tournament accomplishment. We're playing in the conference championship game. The game's played at ETSU at the time, and we're the Lipscomb is the 1 seed, Belmont's the 2 seed. Lipscomb and Belmont bitter rivals, and one of us is going to go to the NCAA tournament for the first time. And that was an overtime game that Belmont won, so that's clearly that's my favorite coaching memory of all time is that championship game and going to the NCAA tournament for the first time. Belmont's been 8 times since that 2006 championship.
Yep. And then after the 2010-2011 season, you got an opportunity to be the head coach at Stevenson University. How did it feel to finally get that opportunity to be the head coach of a Division I basketball program?
Yeah, it was it was thrilling at the time. There's no doubt about that. I'm really grateful for Stetson for giving me the chance to do that. I've been at Belmont and part of a really successful program for a long time. And Stetson and Belmont were in the same conference, so I think they recognized what we had, and I think they wanted something very similar. And so the timing was good. I was very familiar with that program. I'd been to DeLand and Stetson many times, and so there weren't a lot of surprises. There were 2 very different schools, 2 very different administrations and so forth, but not a lot of surprises overall. And it was an awesome experience for me. I was only there for 2 years, but personal growth, family growth, professional growth, we accomplished more in those 2 years than we have, in any 2 years prior to or since, probably.
And you mentioned Lipscomb a little bit earlier. You ended up going there in 2013. What was that dynamic like with that rivalry that you addressed between them and Belmont?
Yeah, it was strange. It was awkward for everybody, really. I'm a Nashville guy. I've literally lived in Nashville my whole life, except for the 2 years I was at Stetson. And Belmont and Lipscomb are 2 miles apart. And a lot of people don't know, Lipscomb actually has a K through 12 program, high school, that's very successful. And they were my rival in high school as well. So I went from basically 7th grade until 2013 when I became their head coach, and they had been my rival that entire time. So a lot of years. So there's some head scratching going on by both sides. A lot of people that knew me and Belmont fans saying, how in the world could he go coach at Lipscomb? And definitely a lot of Lipscomb people saying, how in the world would they hire a Belmont guy? But, the truth is the schools are very similar. I knew a lot of people at Lipscomb that I had great respect for and actually had really good relationships with already. And it's a good job. I mean, it's a really good basketball job. And so it was, even though it seems like it was a personal move to come back to Nashville, it was far more in a way a professional move because I knew that Lipscomb had potential to do good things.
And when you were eventually returned to Belmont, was there kind of like will this guy just pick a side already kind of attitude in that rivalry?
There are probably some people that feel that way. But I was at Lipscomb for 6 years. I gave my heart and soul to that school, and I love it, and I still do. I mean, I still have great relationships with a lot of people there, and that was very sad for me to leave. But again, in a very similar way, I just felt like professionally it was – Belmont job was a little better job, a little bit more established, a little bit more potential in the short term. I definitely think Lipscomb can do all those same things, but it was just a little better place. Not to mention the fact that I'd spent 20 years there, and and it felt like home as well.
Yeah, you were named head coach at Belmont in 2019. What was going through your mind at the time when you were named at that position, especially being a player and an assistant for so many years, and especially taking over after Rick Byrd?
Yeah, it was interesting just to, how it all came full circle because, when I left Belmont in 2011, I mean, my total assumption was I'd never be going back, and I didn't even know if I'd ever come back to Nashville. That's not the way coaching works. Once you leave, you're gone, and you might have multiple stops. If you're lucky, you might have multiple stops. And so, so I didn't plan for that. It worked out, the timing was right, and it worked out. And so I was certainly privileged and very humbled to have the opportunity to take over for Coach Byrd and to go back home and run a really good program.
Yeah, you guys were very successful in your first year, going 26-7 and 15-3 in conference play. You were able to win the conference championship in your first year coaching. What was that like? And then with COVID hitting a few days later, what was that experience like? Just going through all of that and knowing that you weren't able to go back to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, the season itself was kind of a personal roller coaster for me, honestly, because from the very beginning, we lose our very first game at Illinois State. It's a close game, but we didn't win it. And then we lost 2 or 3 more non-conference games that I felt like we could have, should have won. So we never really got things rolling. And then we're 5-3 at one stretch in the OVC, and both Austin Peay and Murray State, who had very good teams, were 8-0 at the time and had already beaten us once. And so we're 3 games back, plus a tiebreaker, with 10 games to go in conference play. And but we reel off 10 straight. We end up winning the league, and then we end up winning the tournament. And and so to look back now, it's pretty rewarding the way it all worked out. As for the tournament itself, I mean, that was totally had our legs cut out from underneath us. We'd already earned the chance to go. We're practicing. We didn't know, obviously Selection Sunday hadn't occurred yet, so we didn't know where we were going and who we were playing, but we knew we were in. And, and then just the dominoes started falling, and wasn't anything we could do about it except be disappointed. And we've kind of been moving on to other things ever since then, I guess.
And what was the summer like over this offseason where we weren't sure if we were going to see college basketball? What was it like from your perspective?
Yeah, miserable. It was no fun at all. I mean, it was, we had Thursday, I think the date was March 12th, maybe in the 13th. But, we had practice, like I mentioned, for the NCAA tournament. And later that day, the tournament was canceled. And we had a team meeting the next day, Friday, just to tell our players, like a lot of campuses, students had to leave campus and everything else. So we sent our students home the very next day after practice. That was, I think, March 13th. And I didn't see almost any of them again until August the 23rd, Wow. And so it was strange. And then there were just disappointments all along the way. I mean, of course, none of us knew what COVID was going to look like or turn into, back in early March. So we thought we were going to come back on June 1st, and then we thought it was June 16th, and then we thought it was July the 1st, and then we thought it was August the 1st, and so just kind of disappointment and setback after setback, and it was tough. But guys are young and resilient, and they all you need to do is open the door for them, and they'll get right through it, and we've managed to survive just like everybody else has. Hasn't been any tougher for us than anybody else, but that doesn't mean it's been fun either.
Yeah, you guys are having another outstanding season this year. What has been the biggest struggle for you guys in this unprecedented season?
Well, our preseason, even after we finally got back together, it was really first week of September before we could start our workouts. And from September until December, we had a really tough go of it. We didn't have a lot of positive cases, but we had a lot of contact tracing. And so, we felt like we were already behind. And then we had very little preseason. We had 3 days in the month of November where we had 10 players or more for practice. And every other day in November, we had 6 or less. So it was quite unusual to be going to play games there at the end of November. And, you hadn't even really practiced for weeks, and didn't know what we had, didn't know what the season was going to look like. So that was clearly the most difficult part. We won some games early, even though we weren't very good. We lost one early where we weren't very good. But since then, it's been a pretty good run.
Yeah. So you guys are on a 21-game win streak at the moment, and it just seems like everything's clicking for you. What is that experience like, and how do you keep your players motivated to keep on going and keep pushing to the end?
Yeah, we've got some sharp kids in the program. We've got guys who have already won a couple of championships and earned their way to 2 different NCAA tournaments, one of which wasn't played, as we've already talked about. But ironically, we don't have any seniors on our team at all, but we do have guys that have been around. And so, they've we know what we lost last year, and to walk into this season, and very intentionally try to play it without any regrets. Our players have done a fabulous job of just showing up every day and trying to get better no matter what our streak looks like.
And you mentioned there's no seniors, but who in your mind has really stepped up and been a team leader and said, all right, we're going to do the best with this situation that we have presented in front of us here?
Yeah, we've got great leadership really across the board. We have 5 juniors, and all 5 of them will graduate in May. So it's not like we don't have experience and maturity and everything else. But Grayson Murphy's the heartbeat of our team. He's not our leading scorer, but he's, everybody in our league would say he's the MVP of our team. And he just finds a way to impact every game, every practice. He's just one of those really unusual guys that you rarely ever, if ever, get the chance to coach.
With 2 games left in the regular season, what are you looking for to improve upon going into the conference tournament as you're looking for your second consecutive conference title and run into the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, first of all, we've got 2 tough games, and not just 2 games, but 2 tough games. Our game on Thursday. Well, this week we play the second and third place team, and so we'll have to play well. Both games are on the road, and so we'll definitely have to play well to keep this going. But we also have a bigger picture in mind. If we continue to win, we're going to be we can improve our seeding should we get to the NCAA. We can if we don't win our conference tournament, we can put ourselves in a bubble conversation. So there's a lot to play for, a lot of things that should motivate us to go out and play well.
And Coach, you mentioned some of those struggles at the beginning where you said you won some games when you guys weren't very good at the start. What do you think your team's done well as the season's gone on that's allowed them to find so much success?
Well, one thing is we've just been extremely lucky with COVID. Since we got all of our players back, I think on December the 5th for the first time since the first or second week of September. And we haven't had any disruptions since then. So even though we weren't very good, just being able to have a regular schedule and not have any pauses. We were totally lucky that none of our opponents had to pause. We didn't lose any games because of our opponents either. And, so just the continuity that we've enjoyed since the first part of December, is the biggest reason why we're good. We returned a lot of good players and, we had some expectations, but we've also had it better than a lot of teams in the sense that, we've been able to practice every day and play all our games and just, it feels like a little bit of a normal schedule in that regard.
Right, and you mentioned these next 2 games are not just games, but very big games. What do you think specifically your team's going to need to do to walk away with 2 victories to close out your regular season here?
Two very different teams. Eastern Kentucky is a real high-tempo team. They press 94 feet, which is unusual these days. And so that's kind of a matchup concern as far as style of play goes. And they're also very talented. I mean, I think they've already won 19 games maybe. And then Morehead State is almost the opposite. They're really tough, really physical, really defensive-minded, very mistake-free kind of team. I know they've won more OVC games this year, I think, than ever in their history before. And so, they're having a fabulous year. So it'll take kind of the best of both worlds for us to be good this week.
Sounds good. Coach, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. Best of luck going forward.
You bet, guys. Thank you.